As you already know, since you signed up here, like the topic for today's webinar is Zabbix Agent 2, and basically everything that you can do with a Zabbix Agent 2, and we also try to cover on how to set it up, what are the main differences between the Zabbix Agent 2 and Zabbix Agent 1. Should you use the first one or the second one, or maybe all together, and what are the benefits and what are the downsides, and so on and so on. So, kind of the purpose is to cover everything that we might be interested about whenever we're talking about a Zabbix Agent 2. And rules are nothing new, everything as usual for the webinar. All your microphones are muted. If you want to ask some questions, and I will gladly try to answer those, but I will try to answer those at the end of the webinar, not during that. And if you do have some questions, then please ask them in a Q&A session, not in the chat. If you want to use the chat, you can do that for discussion, networking, applause, or talking with each other and so on. But if we talk about the questions, I'm gonna check just Q&A section. Couple of words about me, just to let you guys know like who I am, to sit here and talk about Zabbix and kind of pretend that I do know like everything around it, and you should listen to me. So my name is Dmitry. High chance that you have seen me or heard me from my YouTube videos. I guess that's like my biggest achievement for all the Zabbix ecosystem, that I made a YouTube channel like 8 or even 9 years ago right now, to cover all stuff all about the Zabbix, how to configure, how to use, how to solve problems, and so on and so on. And at this point, we have already like 150 or maybe even 160 different tutorial videos. And I also made a couple of tools about a Zabbix to make your life easier and a bit more convenient. We're going to touch those also closer to the end of the webinar. And where is that knowledge coming from? Essentially, because I also did work in a Zabbix company itself for 9 years. I've started as a technical engineer and working in a support team. So I've seen a lot of different installations and different niches and business ideas and so on and so on. And ended my career at Zabbix being head of the product and responsible also for the launch of the Zabbix Cloud, and all of that stuff. So kind of feel safe to say that I do know a little bit about the monitoring, and especially about Zabbix. So let me just have chat here. Uh, yeah, all good. So a bit about the Agent 2 overview and the main things. Like Zabbix Agent 2 was released, it feels like very recently, but actually it's already quite many years ago. I think it happened like 5, 6 years ago, something like that. And the first agent, which was already always available together with the Zabbix. Previously, it was not called like Zabbix Agent 1. It was just Zabbix Agent, just because there just was just one of them. And it was and is written in a C level, C language. And then there was released the Zabbix Agent 2, which is fully written in the Go language. And essentially, the Zabbix Agent 2 is capable to do the same stuff that the Agent 1 can do. But additionally, it has a lot of the tools and frameworks and overall the opportunity to use the Go language to create your own modules and extend your monitoring within the functionality of the Zabbix agent. So you can create all sort of the custom stuff and monitor all stuff that, let's say, Zabbix does not support to monitor out of the box, but you can do that without using external scripts, which always creates some sort of the issues, challenges, and overall difficulty to manage all of that stuff. So here you can always use like internal functionality of the Zabbix. You can use like scheduled flexible intervals, also in active checks whenever you don't want to monitor some data after a specified update interval, like every 30 seconds. Maybe you want to do it like every second Monday, 2 p.m. and that's it. Or maybe on top of that, also once every Friday. It does use less TCP connections comparing to the Agent One. So that might be a good news for your networking team, especially if we're talking about monitoring like hundreds of thousands of different hosts. And might not come as a new thing, but essentially, whenever we're talking about monitoring with a Zabbix agent, no matter if that would be Agent One or Agent Two, we're talking about monitoring in most cases Windows hosts and Linux hosts, right? So those are the systems where we can easily natively install Zabbix Agent and start collecting a lot of the metrics easily and natively. A good thing is also that the Agent 2 supports configuration file from Zabbix Agent 1, as we could say, if you just point the binary to the original configuration file of the Agent 1, it's still going to work because, as I said, like the main purpose that Agent 2 can do the same stuff as Agent 1, but it also has advantages, like you can easily extend it. There are a lot of modules already available out of the box, a lot of modules available that you can pre-install additionally. And if you're quite familiar with development, or nowadays development skills are not even so necessary anymore. You can just vibe code your own plugins and extensions to the Zabbix Agent 2 and create your own custom monitoring templates. Out of the box systemd monitoring, which is a nice thing to have. There's also like NVIDIA monitoring template. There's very good templates for database monitoring, MySQL, MSSQL, Postgres, all of them supported with Agent 2. And essentially, like whenever, if you just spin up your Zabbix installation and you start to look like, okay, what could we monitor in our environment? Very often, if we talk about something above just an operating system, if we go like NVIDIA drivers or something like that, you'll mostly find that, yeah, okay, we can do that, but for that, we will need to use the Zabbix Agent 2, because all of the fancy things to be monitored are achieved with the plugins of the Zabbix Agent 2. So kind of summarizing most of the stuff that we already mentioned, Zabbix Agent 2 is written in a Go language. The first agent is written in a C language. Writing in Go might be a little bit difficult in at least in the beginning if you're just starting out. It's don't really want to say like a complex, but quite demanding language to write some code into. It is a drop-in replacement for the Zabbix agent, so both agents can coexist on the same system. And if you already have like 100 hosts being monitored with a Zabbix agent, you can also easily just replace the same agent with a Zabbix agent 2, and everything is going to be fine because it supports all the previous functionality. So the same keys, like if we talk about the basic templates that you might be using, like Linux operating system monitoring or Windows operating system monitoring, all of that stuff is gonna continue to work even if you do the switch to the Zabbix Agent 2. Supports all configuration file format, as I mentioned. And essentially is being developed to reduce the number of TCP connections. You can easily extend it with all sort of different plugins, support for complex monitoring scenarios. And another good advantage that was added in a recent version is SNMP v3 for SNMP v3 hot reload after authentication and privacy settings change. So you don't need to restart and don't need to run a manual runtime command. It's happening on the fly. Improved active checks. So active checks now do support also scheduled and flexible intervals. If we talk about a Zabbix Agent 1, that was supported only for the passive checks. And as you can see here, in a screenshot, so we can define like, okay, we still want to have some sort of update interval, which is 10 seconds in this case, but we want to have it only starting with Monday till Friday and in a time window between 9 a.m. till 10 a.m. And important to mention also, if you are trying to configure these custom intervals, so for them to actually work as expected, you also need to specify the update interval to 0 on the items. If you will not do that, if you will have like update interval set to 10 seconds, then both of these checks are going to go like in parallel. So you will have a custom interval that is going to run in this pre-configured period, and you will also have the update interval that is going to run every 10 seconds. Zabbix Agent 2 also supports the parallel execution of multiple active checks for each server active. So in case if your agent is being monitored by maybe multiple Zabbix servers or maybe multiple Zabbix proxies, so the parallel execution of different checks is going to be supported in that case as well. Agent 2 buffer. So whenever we talk about a buffer, I guess the first thing that you would think about is like how the Zabbix proxy works. So the main purpose of the proxy is like if we know that that location has some limitations in the internet and it might have not the best connection to the Zabbix server, so it is likely that the proxy is not going to be able to send the data to the server. That's why there is like a database. You can use SQLite or MySQL or Postgres. You can also use a memory buffer so that if data is not being able to send to the Zabbix server, then it is kept until the connection is successful, and then you send the data. And here we have exactly the same logic for the Agent 2. With the main difference that we don't have a big database engine support like MySQL, Maria, Postgres. We basically have an option to have either a memory buffer or a buffer using a SQLite engine. And SQLite is like kind of like a database, but it is a database within a single file on your file system. So it's not intended for high load, a lot of writes and reads. But if we talk about an agent, which is just a single point of our monitoring, then it's going to be perfectly sufficient. And persistent buffer is supported both on Unix-like systems and Windows hosts. So you can use that on your Linux machines, Ubuntu, Debian, Red Hat, CentOS, Alma Linux, whatever, and also on Windows, Windows 10, Windows 11, Windows Server, and all of that stuff. Configurable via Agent 2 configuration file, enable persistent buffer equals 1, and specify the location of the buffer file, so where you want to store it. If we're sitting on a Windows, then obviously it's going to be like C, temporary folder and a buffer, or if it is a Linux system, then we need to provide some TMP or something like that. So let me try also to show that for you somehow on the screen. So we need to find a configuration file of the Zabbix Agent 2, and it is always located as any other Zabbix components in etc /Zabbix slash Zabbix Agent 2.conf file, and you can already tell that this is actually quite similar to Agent 1 configuration file, right? And here we just search for enable persistent buffer, and it also has a description like enable usage of a local persistent storage for active items, 0 disabled, in memory buffer is used by default, and if you switch to 1, then it's going to use the persistent buffer. And then we can also configure sorry, let's go like this, buffer size, and enable persistent buffer and persistent buffer period. and also the file of where it is actually gonna be written. And don't worry, like I already have Zabbix Agent 2 pre-installed here, but a bit later I'm gonna show you how you can install it for yourself. I'm gonna go with the full stuff. So whenever you um, specify those configuration parameters in the Zabbix Agent config file, unfortunately, like no matter if that's a Zabbix Agent 1 or a Zabbix Agent 2, you still need to restart your agent after you make any changes to configuration files. And whenever you will do that, if we specify that in a temporary folder we want to have a file called buffer, whatever, then the file is going to be created right after you restart your agent. Persistent buffer period can be configured. The default is 1 hour. We saw already this configuration parameter also in the agent configuration file. Like if you need to extend it, you can always do that. But of course, the best practice is to not go crazy, like not specify that to I don't know, 3 days or 5 days or something like that. Essentially, all of these buffers are intended to save you for some short outages of the network connection between the Zabbix agent and the server or the proxy. And remember that the persistent buffer is used only for the active checks. And active checks are essentially the better choice for your monitoring. So if we talk about like I don't know CPU load monitoring on your computer, you can do it in both ways. You can monitor those in as a passive check and also as an active check. Same data is going to be received. And basically, the main difference is type of communication. So if we talk about a passive agent checks, then the server or the proxy is connecting to the agent, requesting information, CPU load in this case, and waiting for the response, and then closing the connection, right? But if we talk about active checks, then the agent is connecting to the server or proxy, requesting the list of what kind of items do I need to check and how often, then does the monitoring and then sends the data to the server or proxy. So our server and proxy is more offloaded. There's less load on it, which is essentially better. And also, if we are monitoring some remote connections. Maybe we are providing monitoring as a service to some customers. It's always going to be an issue with a passive checks because nobody's going to want to greenlight all of the firewalls and allow connections from some remote host, which in our case would be Zabbix server, to connect to our local devices within our networks. However, if we use active checks, then all of the connections are outgoing and it's much easier to maintain and manage all of that stuff from the internal network. Buffer as such, it exists. It's a file, right? And basically, we can even like open the content of it, and we can check, and we can see also here in a SQLite example. All of the fields that we have that include like IDs, item IDs, Unix time, timestamp, the actual value that we're collecting, and so on and so on. So using a persistent buffer adds a layer of redundancy. If server for some reason is unreachable, the data is still stored in the persistent buffer and the data is still preserved after the agent restart as opposed to in memory buffer. So memory buffer is the default, but if issue happened with agent and let's say it crashed where you restarted it, then you kind of lose all of the data. If it's written in SQLite or just to the file, then it's still there and it's not going to be lost. So whenever your agent comes online, the data is still going to be sent. But I would always like suggest to think carefully in what cases do you really need it? Should you enable the persistent buffer on all of your Zabbix agents too? Or should you migrate from 100,000 of existing Zabbix agent ones to the Zabbix agent 2 just to enable this on file system storage? Probably not, especially if we're talking about let's say monitoring just some basic servers where we collect some data like CPU load, free disk space, memory utilization, disk usage, and some network traffic on the network interface, and so on and so on. Are we really like so much worried if we're gonna lose 2 or 3 data points because of disruption in the internet connection? Probably not. In some cases, maybe yes. So overall, my suggestion would be to evaluate case by case where you really need it. If you don't need it, then just don't use it. Which brings us to installation process of how we can actually spin up Zabbix Agent 2 on our system. All of like we have these webinars every 2 weeks since the beginning of this year, and after 2 weeks we're going to have another webinar about the Zabbix Java Gateway installation and monitoring. Tomcat monitoring is example. So we talk about different stuff, and it's always like a question to what kind of version should we use for all of these tutorials? Like Zabbix 7.0 is LTS version, so long-term support, but it's already kind of old. And Zabbix 7.4 is the most recent stable version, but it's going to be out of the support after like a month or two, depending when the next version is going to be out. Because that's not a LTS version. And for the last couple of webinars, I'm using Zabbix 8.0, which is going to be the new LTS version. It's going to be supported for 5 years. We don't know when exactly it's going to be released as a stable version, but it is already available. We already had also a webinar about, let me try to find it, about installation of Zabbix, and there we covered exactly installation of the Zabbix 8.0. It is in a 8.0 Alpha 2, but you can still install it. Like if you go to the Zabbix.com, get Zabbix, Zabbix packages, that's what we usually use, and 8.0 pre-release. So yeah, we're using 8.0 also in this webinar to install Zabbix Agent, and I do have my Zabbix somewhere. Where it is? Let me try to find it. I lost it. I should have Zabbix frontend somewhere here. Okay, let's just open a new one. 4913. There we go. Just a second. There we go. We have Zabbix, which is 8.0 Alpha 2, right? So it's good for testing. You can already see some features that are already developed and added to the release. Not everything. Definitely not good enough for the production. But if you're watching this webinar in a recording after like a month or two, then high are chances that 8.0 is already in a stable version, so everything is going to be good for you. Essentially, what we're doing here is we're adding repository of Zabbix Agent 8.0 for distribution of the Linux Alma Linux 10, and we are installing Zabbix Agent 2 and Zabbix Agent 2 dash plugin, which has information about all of the plugins, right? And plugins are essentially different monitoring types that Zabbix has official templates for. So if we go to the zabbix.com, get Zabbix, Zabbix packages, 8.0 pre-release, Alma Linux, version 10, server front and agent. If we want to install the full stack, choose the database, web server, and then here you get the same command that I have in my slides. So add a repository, you grab your terminal, and let me remove this, and you just copy paste. I already have it added, so I already have Zabbix Agent installed, and then it's a matter of DNF install Zabbix Agent 2 and Zabbix Agent 2. What was the full name? Zabbix Agent 2 plugin. like this. Again, as I said, I already have them installed. I have Zabbix Agent 2 minus capital V version. Where's the version 8.0 alpha 2? So that's how you get Zabbix Agent on your system, on your Linux system. Then enable the auto start of by typing systemctl enable Zabbix Agent 2 just to ensure that every time when you restart your virtual machine or physical server, it's going to come back up online. And then we always need to do the first time configuration. Like I already have, again, now I need to find it in all of my tabs. It's a bit of a mess. Sorry, guys. There we go. Zabbix, like I already have Zabbix server and frontend installed here. And by default, there is always Zabbix server host with the template that is also using a Zabbix agent. And availability is green. So it is connected to a local host. So same server as the Zabbix server, connected to the agent and collecting the data. Like I can go to monitoring latest data, host Zabbix server, click apply, and there we go. We have some stuff about a CPU and overall the data is coming in. For that to make happen, like everything is usually already fine if you run everything on a local host. But if your Zabbix server is installed on one machine and your Zabbix agent is on a second machine, you always need to do a little bit of configuration. Sorry, not the Zabbix server, but Zabbix agent D, agent2.conf. And we are looking for the server parameter, which by default always has a value of 127001. And this basically is a list of IP addresses or DNS names from which Zabbix agent is going to accept connections. So as I said, passive checks mean that Zabbix server is connecting to the agent, requesting the information, requesting the checks, and waiting for the response. And just to ensure that there are no bad guys through the internet requesting all sort of different stuff from our Zabbix agents, there is basically a whitelist from who we're actually going to accept the connections. So 127001 perfectly works for us since we are on the local host. Then there is another parameter called ServerActive, and you can already imagine. So if the server is for the passive checks, the ServerActive is the same stuff, but for active checks. Remember, Zabbix can work both in a passive checks and also in active checks. This is not a whitelist from who agent will accept connections, because as we remember, active check means that agent is connecting to the server. So essentially that's what it is. It's the list of IP addresses or DNS names to which these Zabbix agent will connect and request request list of the items it needs to monitor and to which server it also going to send collected data. But if we think about but we could have hundreds of the agents and still one Zabbix server. How can our Zabbix server know which agent is actually connecting and what type of items do we need to provide to it? Because each host is going to have its own different items and all of the configuration, right? So for that, we need to use hostname parameter. And hostname by default, again, is Zabbix server. And here it's important that your hostname needs to match specifically the hostname as you have in your Zabbix frontend. Hostname, Zabbix server. Let me zoom in. And also case sensitive. So if this one is Zabbix server with a capital Z, it must be exactly like that also in the configuration file, or it's not going to work. Only when this explicitly matches the host name of the host in the Zabbix frontend, we have a clear match and active checks work. You might ask okay, but this works for a single agent, right? I go to the config file, I make a changes, I compare it with the Zabbix frontend, everyone are happy. But how should we deal whenever we use some Chef, Puppet, and any other management tools to deploy like thousands of the agents on our computers. Do I really need to go manually to each agent, connect via SSH, and provide these host name because it's like dynamic thing, right? So for those cases, usually we use this host name item, and host name item can be any item from the Zabbix, any built-in item as example, or you can create your own item and create a user parameter, use some sort of shell command or some script, which value is going to be used then as a host name. There are three different levels. The first one is host name. If that is set, we use this. If host name is not set, then it is always using a host name item, and hostname item by default is system.hostname. And if this one is not set, then it's just using the local system hostname. And the local system hostname is system.hostname.